All right, welcome to the start of a new week. Welcome to a Panther-Lair.com weekend recap. You know, we do this every Monday morning, just kind of bring you up to speed on everything you need to know to start the new week. Cherry picked it by starting this new video feature here in the month of June, when every weekend, every Monday, there's something to talk about from the previous week. Something to bring you up to speed on, something that you're going to need to know about as you go into work and you get talking to your friends and want to show off with all your impressive knowledge of Pitt sports news and whatnot, and recruiting and all those kinds of things. We cherry-picked it a little bit to start this in June, but I figured this was a good time to do something like this. We'll see what July looks like when there's a little bit less to talk about on a weekly basis. But this was a good time to do it because you might get through the weekend and not really know everything that happened. You might have heard about this guy, you might have heard about that guy. Wait, you missed this, you missed that. Well, here's your one-stop shop. It's your opportunity to find out everything that happened over the weekend, everything you need to know about over the weekend. Of course, all the info is right there at Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. And, if you've been following along there over the weekend, you could probably do this video yourself. But in case you haven't been, then you can watch this video and get up to speed on everything. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's where we put out these weekend recaps every week. We do our live show every Wednesday night at 8:30, the live Panther-Lair show where we can interact, go back and forth, and talk about everything that's going on. You can ask questions and post comments, and we'll have a little dialogue for an hour or so every Wednesday night on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then on Fridays, we release a new conversation. Is what we've been calling a conversation with. And we've had a lot of great conversations so far. Since we started this a few weeks ago, we talked to Nellie Cummings. I thought that was a great convo. Talked to Jason Capel, which I thought was really enlightening and really kind of... we touched on a lot of topics, and that was a long conversation. Hopefully you got a chance to check that out. We talked to Che Wabuko, incoming Pitt freshman wide receiver, about what he's got going on. And then this last week we talked to Isaiah Neal, who's a defensive tackle commit in the class of 2023. I thought that was a great one too. I think they've all been really interesting conversations, and I hope you've gotten a chance to check them out. Oh, I forgot about the Diaz-Graham twins, Jorge and Guillermo. We had those guys together, and that might have been the best one. I thought that would be good. I thought it would be fun. It ended up being way better and way more fun than I ever could have imagined. So you got to go check that out. The Diaz-Graham twins on our conversation video interview from a couple weeks ago. But it's all right there on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So subscribe to the channel, and that way you'll never miss anything that we release, any of our video content. So another week, the final official visit weekend of June, and there's a lot of storylines that came out of it this past weekend. A bunch of commitments, one decommitment, some announced commitments, some unannounced commitments, offensive linemen. There were a lot of storylines, but we got to start at the top, right up there with Hykeem Williams, 5-star wide receiver, number 16 prospect in the class of 2023, number 3 wide receiver prospect in the class of 2023, one of the best receivers in the country. As I say, he's ranked number 3 among wide receiver recruits, and he was at Pitt for an official visit this past weekend. And that right there tells you how big the news is. I mean, this is the highest rated recruit to visit Pitt on an official visit since I started doing this job. I mean, I can't remember another recruit who was rated this highly. I mean, they've gotten a few 5-stars in the time that I've done this. Dorian Johnson was most recent, Jonathan Baldwin behind him, but I don't think either guy was ranked number 16. I don't think either guy was ranked that high in the country. And that's who Pitt had in town for an official visit. It was the headliner of this past weekend's recruiting visits. It was the headliner of all the June official visits. And it was really the third step in Pitt's recruitment of Hykeem Williams and its work to try and get him in the fold. Because it started when they hired Tyquan Underwood. And Underwood had the relationship with Williams. He had enough of a relationship, a strong enough relationship, to get Williams genuinely interested in Rutgers. All right? So that I think should tell you all you need to know about Tyquan Underwood's relationship with Hykeem Williams. And so when they hired Underwood at Pitt, that brought the relationship along to Pitt, and it was strong enough to get him up here on campus for an unofficial visit this spring. I think he was here in late March. That's step number 2. All right. And they did enough on that unofficial visit, impressed Hykeem Williams enough and built strong enough bonds with the rest of the staff to get him back for step 3, which is the official visit this past weekend, where Pitt really had an opportunity to show everything that's great about Pitt, everything that's great about Pittsburgh, put their best foot forward, and create a perfect visit experience for Hykeem Williams. That was the goal. From everything we've heard, they accomplished that goal. From everything we heard, they really impressed Hykeem Williams and moved themselves into a strong position in his recruitment. Georgia and Texas A&M, what you've been told is that Georgia and Texas A&M are the top two for Hykeem Williams. Those are the two schools that are most likely to land him. I don't think that's the case. Georgia, yes. I think Pitt's ahead of Texas A&M. I'm not going to sit here and say that I think Pitt's ahead of Georgia, but I don't think they're all that far behind. And I think it's a lot closer than anybody nationally or anybody looking from the outside is going to, believe, to be quite honest. This isn't going to turn into some sort of alternative news podcast where I tell you, all the things that the national media is not willing to tell you. But the reality is Pitt is in really strong shape with Hykeem Williams. I'm not going to go so far as to say they're going to get him. All right, that's a bridge too far for me. I don't like making predictions even when I'm 95% sure about something. And I am not nearly that close to that level of confidence when it comes to Pitt and Hykeem Williams. But what I will tell you is that coming out of this official visit, I've heard this from multiple sources in a lot of different places. What I've heard is that Pitt is in really strong shape with Hykeem Williams. Did a great job with the 5-star wide receiver this weekend. And, obviously that's huge. Now, this is going to play out for a while. Even if he were to commit tomorrow, even if he would have committed yesterday, this would still play out for another 6 months until signing day in December. Whether he commits today or he commits on December 1st or whenever it is, it's going to be a 6-month battle for all the schools that are involved here. Right now, I think it's Pitt and Georgia. I think Pitt's going head-to-head with the national champs, which is pretty impressive. And it's a huge credit to Taekwon Underwood for that relationship. It's a huge credit for Charlie Partridge, who has stepped in and become a big part of the recruitment here. And it's a big credit to Pat Narduzzi, who has done what he's been, who's been doing what he has done over his time at Pitt and really connected with Williams and with Williams' family. And I think created a pretty strong foundation for recruiting, like I say, the number 16 recruit in the class of 2023. That's the big storyline. Storyline number 2, the beef. Offensive linemen. Pitt had 6 offensive line recruits on campus this weekend for official visits. I was going to say they got commitments from 2 of them, which is true, but we'll get to point number 3 there about these silent commitments, these guys who haven't announced their commitments yet. So let's just say what we know. Pitt came out of the weekend with 2 announced offensive line commitments. Colin Van Roy is one. He was a camp offer, a kid out of Ohio. He committed to Pitt on Sunday and announced his commitment at the conclusion of his official visit. And then Ryan Coretta, another offensive lineman from Ohio, who announced his commitment on Sunday, but he actually didn't take his official visit to Pitt this past weekend. He visited 2 weeks ago, and it was at Michigan State this past weekend. And at the conclusion of his visit with the Spartans, said, I want to go to Pitt. And he announced his commitment. So we've talked a lot about how this recruiting class needs to load up on offensive linemen. I think they need it's going to be a bigger class, and I think they need to have a bigger group of offensive linemen. They need to get a lot of guys in, 4, maybe 5. I could, if I was the coaches, I could talk myself into taking 5 offensive line recruits in this class if they're 5 guys I feel good about. I'm not going to take 5 just to get 5, but if they're 5 guys I feel good about, I could talk myself into taking 5 in this class because I think there's room to do it. And I think the roster merits adding that kind of, foundation, reloading along the offensive line. The coaches have been telling the recruits that they're only going to take 4 in the class, which I think has created a little bit of, I don't want to say pressure, but you put a little bit of leverage into the situation when you tell these guys that you have a cap on how many offensive line recruits you're going to take. And once you hit that cap, the door is closed. Although it's recruiting, the door is never fully closed on anything. So they got 2. There are a couple unannounced commitments, guys who committed. Pat Narduzzi did his Pitt is it tweet. but nobody has claimed those yet. No recruits have claimed them. We think one of them is an offensive lineman, so you're looking at 3 offensive linemen in the class. And all of a sudden, and actually, I mean, if you listened to the Panther-Lair show last week, we did it on Thursday night rather than Wednesday night. We had to move it around, do the scheduling stuff. But if you listened to the show last Thursday night, if you've been reading on Panther-Lair.com before the weekend, through the weekend, we thought they would come out of this weekend with a whole new perspective on the offensive line situation. That they went into the weekend with 0 commitments on the offensive line, and they would come out with at least 2 and possibly 3. And that's exactly what happened. Now, we didn't necessarily, I didn't count on Ryan Coretta being one of those guys who joined the class. That's actually him, right there that we have pictured on the screen. It's Ryan Coretta posing in front of the ACC Championship trophy and a couple of the Coastal Division trophies. I didn't count on him joining the class this weekend. I thought he would take a little bit of time after the Michigan State visit. He didn't take much time at all after the Michigan State visit. But we thought they would come out of this weekend with 2, possibly 3 offensive line commits, and that's exactly what happened. And that puts a crunch on some of these other guys who visited, namely Jordan Church, who's down to Pitt in Louisville, kid out at offensive guard at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. He's one to keep an eye on. He's a guy who is probably going to make his decision in the next couple of days. Depending on who you talk to, it could be Pitt, it could be Louisville. And I apologize if it seemed like there was a little bit of a glitch there, but as we're taping this, I'm taping this Monday morning, okay, for a couple reasons. I'm recording this weekend recap Monday morning. As we're taping this, Tyree, an offensive lineman, just announced he is committed to Pitt as well. So that is one of those silent, previously silent offensive line recruits. A kid out of Florida, a big offensive tackle prospect, big body guy, could play tackle, could ultimately move inside to guard. So we're talking about how there's we think one of the other commitments is an offensive lineman. We think they have 3 offensive line committed. Well, we were waiting for Tyree to announce his commitment, and there he did it this morning as we were sitting here talking. So I didn't want to retape everything we did at the beginning of this show, or at the beginning of this video, but I figured we should probably get up to speed on that. So that's 3 offensive linemen committed for the class. And now you're getting up to that point where you are going to run low on spots. Philip Daniels, a guy who got a camp offer and took his official visit 2 weeks ago, is one. He said he's going to commit on July 2nd. I don't know if they're going to be out of spots by then. You know what I mean? If they were to get someone like Jordan Church, the offensive lineman from IMG Academy, here in the next day or two, that might fill up. There might not be space for Philip Daniels. Now, these targets, these cap numbers, are always flexible. You can always move it around if the right guys want to commit. We'll see what the coaches think as these next few days progress. But to answer the question of where are the offensive linemen, well, they've got 3 now. And in the matter of just a couple days, their offensive line class has gone from 0 to 3, which is a pretty big jump. Topic number 3, silent commitments. And this silent commitments are always a weird thing to me. We talk about, this guy's a silent verbal. What does that mean? In the case of Pitt this year, Pitt every year since Pat Narduzzi got here, recruits will commit to Pat Narduzzi. He'll put out his Pitt is it tweet, and then we work and wait to find out who the recruit was who committed. And sometimes we get word of it. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes it's a surprise. Sometimes it's somebody we knew was coming. There's a lot of different ways that these things go down. What's unique this year, what hasn't really happened too often in the past, I can only think of, one instance comes to mind right off the bat. But what we've seen this year is there have been a handful of guys who committed to the point where Pat Narduzzi sent his tweet, but we're still waiting to hear from them. Now, when I started taping this video, like I said, we were still waiting to hear from 4. Tyree has taken one of those off the board. Still waiting to hear for 3 guys who've committed in the last 9 days or so, but have not yet announced their commitments. We do think, we have, we're pretty sure we know who all of them are. And we put it on the message boards. If you go to Panther-Lair.com, you're going to get all that information on who they are and what, how they fit into the class and what their positions are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a different, we don't usually have to wait this long for the announcement. The one time that I can think of, Daniel Carter, I think, I want to say he committed. No, you know what? Daniel Carter announced his commitment the night of the ACC championship game in 2018. He had taken his official visit in June. I think he committed, if not on the official visit, at some point during the season. But I think he was committed before that night. I don't think Pat Narduzzi sent out a tweet that night. I think Jalen Twyman committed on his official visit in December of whatever his year was, and then didn't actually announce it himself until like signing day in February. That was back when they had the February signing day. I forget what year that was. Maybe 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. So there have been a few instances, but not that many, where you have these outstanding commitments that we haven't really tracked down or confirmed, or the kid hasn't announced yet. But right now we're sitting on 3. And, I think one of them will announce by the end of the week, this week. The other 2 we're a little less certain about and still trying to figure out what's going on there. And you start to wonder, wait, are they having second thoughts? Are they walking back on that commitment? Are they waiting for a special video or a special graphic? Sometimes when there's a delay between Pat Narduzzi tweeting out that there's a new commitment and the kid actually announcing it, sometimes the delay is just based on waiting for Pitt's graphics department and to get an edit put together. This is the world. This is 2022 that, you can't announce it without a cool graphic, or a cool video or something, because now we're all doing videos. Everybody's releasing a video when they commit, and they're waiting on the school to create that video and send it to them. This is what it is. So, sometimes we're waiting on that. Now, on a few of these guys, like I say, we're 9-10 days out from their commitment and still sort of waiting on an announcement. So we know who we're looking at. We know who we're waiting on. It's just a matter of time before they make that announcement. Like I say, I think one of the 3 will be, this week. The other 2, I'm not really sure. So we'll see what happens there. Topic number 4 from the weekend. Not as good of news. Pitt lost a commitment. Shelton Lewis, the defensive back from Georgia, committed on the first official visit weekend of June. Officially, formally decommitted on Sunday. I think he announced it. This is after he took 2 subsequent official visits. He went to Boston College the week after Pitt. He went to North Carolina last weekend. I don't know if he went anywhere this past weekend. I don't think so. I didn't see anything in the Rivals database. But either way, it was pretty clear. And I think even when he committed, he said, yeah, I'm still probably going to take my official visits. And so you're always kind of watching a situation like that, keeping an eye on it. And, let's see what develops. And some guys end up actually taking the visits. Some guys cancel them. Some guys take the visits and stick with the commitment. Some guys take the visits and, decommit. Some guys cancel their remaining official visits and then end up taking 1 or 2 in December and decommitting. Kadri Jackson, the linebacker from Florida, who was, I think, one of that first big summer of June commitments and June official visits, committed, canceled his remaining official visits, and then in the beginning of December took an official visit to North Carolina and flipped to the Tar Heels. So there's a lot of different ways it can go. And when Shelton Lewis started taking official visits to other schools, I said, all right, that's something to keep an eye on. As of now, he's still committed. And that's all you can really go on. I think the Pitt staff continued recruiting defensive backs, not just because Shelton Lewis was taking his official visits, but just because nowadays, with so many early commitments, you almost have to account for, some amount of attrition. You hear about like big companies like Walmart or Target or Kmart or whoever, Ames, have it built into their annual budget of just sort of like loss. That you're going to have a certain amount of your merchandise stolen, and you have to account for that as when you're starting to put together numbers. Your budgets and whatnot. And I think if you're a college football coaching staff and you have X number of June commitments and a big number of June commitments. I mean, Pitt's sitting on 16 right now. You know, if Shelton Lewis was still committed, they'd be sitting at 17 commitments. If you have 17 commitments in June, you almost have to expect at least one, probably two, or maybe even three of those guys are going to end up decommitting. And so I think you continue recruiting as such. You give yourself some insurance. You give yourself a little bit of cushion. So if you do lose a guy, you're all right. And to that end, you know, even after Shelton Lewis decommitted, Pitt still had 2 defensive backs committed. Plus, I think they added one more from this past weekend, and I think they'll get another one after that. So they were ready for this situation, and I don't think they're actually reaching down to sort of tier 2 prospects at defensive back. I think they're still in shape, in good shape to get a really strong defensive back class this year. But this is going to happen, and there have been decommitments every year since these. I mean, there are decommitments every year as it is. But since these June official visits started, Pitt has lost kids every year. They've gotten commitments from guys in June, and then they've lost them, you know, 1 or 2 every year. It happens. Kadri Jackson and Brandon Mack and T. Denson, Henry Parrish. I mean, we know, and you gnash a lot of teeth and you wring a lot of hands, and it happens again the next year. It's part of it's just part of the situation, you know, and you get these guys to take their official visits early, you get them to commit early. 6 months later, maybe they go look at another school. Now, Shelton Lewis had a pretty quick turnaround. He committed and decommitted in about 3 weeks. Didn't even make it a month. Didn't make it out of June. Usually they don't turn around that quick. But it's not too much of a surprise that somebody's out of the class. We'll see if that's where it stops or if there's another one to follow. We'll find out. And point number 5, that's it for June. I know it's the 27th today, but that's the end of the June official visits. And, you know, looking at the numbers, Pitt brought in 36 recruits for official visits this month. They got commitments from 15 of them, minus 1 for Shelton Lewis. But 15 out of 36, you figure out of those 36, there are probably 5 or 6 who couldn't have committed if they wanted to. Either the spots filled up or things just didn't necessarily go right on the official visit and the coaches moved them down the priority board. You're looking at about 15 out of 30, 50% hit rate on official visitors in June is a pretty good number. I think that's a pretty strong success rate, particularly when some of those guys out of those 30, you know, Hykeem Williams was never going to commit on his official visit. You know, he's going to take his recruitment out a little bit. Stanton Ramel from the first visit weekend wasn't going to commit on his, you know, first official visit. He wanted to take more visits. We'll see where things stand at the end of the summer. We'll see where things stand, obviously, when you get to December. Getting roughly a 50% hit rate is pretty good. That's doing a pretty good job on your official visits. And I think this Pitt coaching staff, I think the Pitt recruiting staff in particular, you know, guys like Graham Wilbert and Carl Lozovko and Adam Calteri, these guys do a really good job setting up the official visits to put the best face forward, to put the best experience for these kids. And that they do a great job with it. And I think the proof is in the pudding. You know, I mean, the numbers tell the story. When you have a 50% success rate, you're doing pretty good. So Pitt's sitting at 16 commitments total. They came into June with 2 commitments. They added 15, lost 1, so they're at 16. I think there's probably a pretty good chance they'll get a couple more before the end of summer, be sitting at 20 or 21. And then, you know, you add those maybe 2 late semi-surprise additions heading into signing day, and you end up with a class right around 23. That's how things look as we sit here coming out of the June official visits. But as we saw earlier on this video, news can happen fast, and it can happen at any time. And by the time you watch this or listen to it, things might have changed already. But as of right now, you know everything you need to know coming out of the weekend and coming out of June. So you're prepared to go impress everyone on your lunch break today with all of your Pitt recruiting info and tell them how good of a job Pitt did with Hykeem Williams and how close they are with the 5-star wide receiver. That will impress people. I guarantee it. Listen, make sure you like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Really appreciate everybody who has done that. I try and make this plea every week on the live show. I make this plea every week on these weekend recap videos. I appreciate everybody who does it. It helps us. It helps us spread the word. It helps us get more eyes on the YouTube channel and on these videos, which, you know, enables us to, you know, sort of keep doing more of what we're doing. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoy doing these videos. I hope you enjoy watching them. Spread the word. by liking the video and subscribing to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Stay tuned on Panther-Lair.com, the main website, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. That's the place where all the news and information is going to be. We do this video once a week, but we had updates all through the weekend. And leading into the weekend, we had updates, and through the weekend. And this Monday morning, put up a big update, kind of recapping everything from the weekend and beyond. That I think really sort of set the table, so you know what to expect, kind of going forward. So you're ready and up to date on all the latest Pitt football recruiting info. So thanks again for watching the video. Stay tuned on Panther-Lair.com. Wednesday night, 8:30, we'll have our live show right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Thanks again. Tune into the live show, and we will talk to you soon.